always fun times. So I do have a connection to Rotary in the family. Thank you so much for having me here. As you'll be aware, the Salvation Army has got many different services that we provide, and my role for Community Ministries is for the northern region, and so that goes from Pukekohe up to Kaitaia. And in our area we have about 22 community ministries centres, which are generally connected to our core, which are our churches, in the midst of knowing that obviously the northern part of the country is the best part to be. I've heard someone's moving south though, but we deliver about 50% of the services for the country for the Salvation Army just in this region, just because of population and the need. So let's start. Over the country we've got 75 centres, and through COVID all of us went into action. Even though we were, most of us were locked down, the Salvation Army was still counted as an essential service, and we brought most of our teams in to deliver the food service, which was a really high need, because it wasn't even just the people who were struggling financially. It was a lot of elderly people were struggling to be able to access food, or were too scared to access food. And we also, in the first lockdown, many lockdowns ago, decided we'd be really clever and bring on a text number that people could text us, and there was still a joke that we say we all survive 4114, because that was our text number, because the number of texts coming in just for this division were thousands a day. And we have to proudly say that we actually did ring them all back. We interviewed, and for the many, well over 80%, we actually did then provide food, and at that stage deliver food. And it was an exciting time, but it was also a slightly frantic time. The next lockdown we learnt that the 4114 was not something that we probably would do again, because we just couldn't keep up. And at that stage, for the next lockdown, our family store staff weren't being seconded over to us, so we were actually a bit down on staff. But the Rotary were a big help through that time for us. As you can see, just for the numbers, and I ran these really roughly, not knowing that Ian was going to be in the room. Ian's our social policy director, so he'd just be looking at these. These are my rough numbers, because Jono wasn't available to give me the national numbers. But I am going, in the last year, because our year goes, I think, like the Rotary year, from 1st of July. So this year we've done about 85,000 parcels nationwide, and in Auckland about 38,000 of those. So it's been a busy year, but the first lockdown year we were sitting about 120,000 parcels, just because the need was so great. The Salvation Army, obviously, and our community ministries, we raise a lot of money, and we have really generous people in the community who also support us, but we also do work with government contracts. So we have aranga tamariki contracts for our social work and anything to do with whānau. Ministry of Social Development is our financial mentoring, which is something that I'm going to talk about a bit later. Housing and urban development, so that is around our transitional housing and our long-term housing. And then we've got Good Shepherd, which works with us for the good loans, and so that helps us run. We've also got about 350 paid staff in community ministries. The Salvation Army has a lot more than that, but community ministries has that many. And we've got a lot of generous New Zealanders who help us fund the work that we're doing. I'm gonna see if the video works. This was the one thing I was panicked about, and I openly admitted that I had to ask my husband and my son last night how to try and make this work, but it's not gone quite as smoothly as I hoped. See if they sound. So the Salvation Army has many different services. Community Ministries has a lot of different areas in it, which you're speaking about. I don't run them by myself. We've got some fabulous people like Anne and Ellerslie who have teams on the ground who run them. I just sort of crack the whip occasionally. Or I sometimes celebrate. But we've got youth services, and through COVID, one of the biggest things, and we're still struggling with it, is our youth didn't go to school, our teenagers didn't go to school, and especially for marginalised families, that meant that actually they were putting their teenagers to work because they had to. There was this high pressure of financial need, and teenagers were being able to get some of the basic jobs that others probably didn't want to do or couldn't do. However, we've still got a massive issue with our teenagers not returning to school, and I think in Auckland we're looking at around a 60% attendance rate, and usually pre-COVID it was around mid-80s, and so there still is an issue there because I know I've got twins, they're 16, obviously they still go to school, but to be able to get a job for a teenager is actually very easy at the moment, and they are on quite a good pay rate. So if you're a family that is really struggling and your child can go out and earn the $21.40 an hour that you can earn now as a teenager, a lot of whānau are having to make the hard decision to actually say, we need you to go to work on this day, not to school. So they're sort of splitting between school for a couple of days and also working at some of those more entry-level jobs. So that's something that's happened through COVID, and our youth, community youth workers are working really closely with us, with schools, with the local community, and also with the truancy officers of how we can connect with whānau and with the youth to try and educate and encourage them to be able to go back and get some of their levels, levels to be able to look at further study, because as we know, if you actually start and you go and work at that more entry-level role, it is harder to actually get promotion and to look at some other things going forward. So our youth workers are out there working extremely hard at the moment, and especially marginalised areas, South Auckland, Roskell South and West Auckland. We've got some really strong youth community youth worker teams which are doing a great job. Welfare is around food, and so food for us is an essential, and for us to be able to meet with people, engage with them, and generally at the first time that you come in to get a food parcel, we just give a food parcel. There isn't too much of a conversation. It is, here's food. We generally in our food parcels try and give enough food for 4 days. So, and we've done a lot of work lately to ensure that they've got fresh produce in them. There's also some kind of protein and a lot of the basic, really good pantry stock, plus bread and cereal. Because as we know, a lot of the whānau have got children, and I'm trying to feed 3 teenagers at the moment, and oh my goodness, I'm sure you've all remember the days. They can eat. And so trying to make sure that we're really putting through some food that will fill people up, but there's some good nutrition in it as well. We've got education programs where we sit with people, we do life skills programs. We've got programs especially for wahine toa, for women. We've got programs that we're working with men who have been part of family harm, because as we know, family harm can really destroy families, but we need to be able to work with these men to be able to give them a chance to learn some new skills, learn some ways to not get triggered when they're angry, things like that. But how do you also, in the midst of that, still keep a connection and a relationship with whānau? Because as we know, a lot of our children are really hurt by the fact that their dad went somewhere. They didn't really understand. They still love their dad, but how do we make sure that the family unit is still safe? Transitional housing. And long-term housing. I'm sure if you all live around this area, but we've got quite a few transitional housing places which are for about a 12 to 20 week period. Families move into them if they're on the housing register. They move in and we work with them, our social workers, and work with them to get them ready for a long-term house. And the Salvation Army also has those, and there are some in this area. Royal Oak has some beautiful apartments behind our head office, where we have a team that assess people and get the right mix of people into the community there, and they've actually got long-term housing, because everybody wants the chance to know that they've got a house. We all need to know that we've actually got some kind of shelter and a place that we can call our own. We've got senior services, and especially through lockdown, a lot of our seniors got really, really lonely and isolated. So we had people still calling, dropping things off at doorsteps, things like that for our elderly, because we found that a lot of the elderly were really isolated, especially the ones that were struggling and were marginalised. Early childhood education. We've got an early childhood education centre at Waitakere and at Mount Wellington, where Anne and Alistair are the core officers. And yesterday I was at Waitakere, and we had a welcome to a new manager there, and the ECE there came in and sung waiata to the new manager, and it was amazing. All these little kids, and they were 95% non-Pākehā, and they were just so sweet, and they're families that actually probably couldn't afford early childhood education in other places, but you could just see the love and the joy and the sense of they were so proud of themselves singing the waiata to this new manager and doing the actions, and then stayed in and sat on the mat eating their morning tea with us. And it's so cool to be able to bring up early childhood education that people can afford, and is also for whānau that may struggle with that in other areas. Financial mentoring. Now, financial mentoring, it used to be called budgeting, but our financial mentors have now sort of stepped up into a new sense of not just looking at day-to-day budgets, but it's the debt that our families are dealing with. They have got massive debt, not just with work and income, but they have been targeted by the high payday lenders and things like that. And how do we work with them to ensure that they understand that that cycle is just so hard, especially if you've got a very, very low income, but how do we also work with the lenders to ensure that we can work out some really good payback structures so it just doesn't keep on rolling in. And so our financial mentors are forever on the phone talking to lenders, working out new ways of getting payments down, of making sure that that was a just process, that the person actually got the loan given to them anyway. And Ian's team has just done a really good piece of work around the add-on insurance that a lot of our marginalised families have been targeted with. And I saw Rhondda on the news yesterday morning. That's a really good document that's available online, because those add-on insurances, they usually are given and pressured to people at the point of sale, and they aren't always helpful, and they are expensive, and most of us have got enough of a quick brain to go, I think we'll be fine. If something happened, we've probably got enough money in the bank to fix it. But the fear and the pressure that goes on are people who are struggling, and the power that sometimes the lender and the people at the sales point have is very hard for a lot of our people to say no to. So there is so much that is happening. We've got many social workers, and man, we celebrate our social workers, because there is a huge demand for social workers at the moment, especially Māori social workers, and the amount of work that we're putting in at our level to ensure that we're getting we can pay them compared to what government agencies are paying, and that we can also give them a safe place to work, because we are a Pākehā organisation in some ways, because we come from England, if you know the history of the Salvation Army, but we're really on this journey of understanding what it is to be a really good titiriti partner, and to care for Māori whānau, but also to care for Māori staff. So Ian actually heads our Māori Ministries runanga, and the work that we're putting in there is good, and it's such a steep learning curve for all of us. Every day I keep on going, I just need to learn more, but each day I work out that I know very little. So, but that's all right, that's a good place to learn from. After COVID, because I was coming here to talk about COVID, but COVID sort of seems a wee while ago, because actually the biggest thing that we're facing at the moment is cost of living. I think everyone here would have gone to the petrol station in the last 2 months and gone, because it is unbelievable what has happened to petrol prices, and we are more privileged than most. We have enough money to be able to, we probably have very many opinions. My husband keeps on going on about the petrol prices, but we can pay for it. It's just a bit of a pain, and it does make a difference. The increase in living prices, not just petrol, but food, rents, everything that is happening. Imagine if already you were struggling and your chance of being able to increase your weekly income is basically nil. So all of our whānau are really struggling at the moment. They have the lowest income and already pre-COVID were struggling and would have a deficit budget at the end of the week. We have found out through the survey that we've just done in February, so that was February. I don't think petrol prices are anything like they are now, but we worked with Korahia Kai, which is a few of our around the country, Auckland City Mission, Vision West, the Salvation Army, a few providers, on ringing 200 people who've had a food parcel from us in the last 6 months, and we did quite an intensive survey with them. We also then at the end gave them a food voucher to be able to really recognise the time they gave us. But what we found is that there is so many people, there's only 4% of the people we talk to who every week can say, I have enough money for food. Actually 50% say sometimes I have enough money for food, but 46% of the people we talk to said seldom have enough money for food. So as soon as you start paying your petrol, your housing, your utilities, the first thing that will go is how much you've got to spend on food. So that was quite an interesting survey. We've also got the breakdown, choose between food and other expenses, and it gave the breakdown of the 200 people that we surveyed, where the money was going. So a lot of the whānau are in government housing, so their rent is actually not as horrific as if you're in the public trying to rent through the public. But so 24% of people's income's going to housing, 38% is going to utilities, 26% is going to their debt, and transport at that time was 21%. I bet you that's gone up quite significantly since then, and then from then on. But when people choose between food and other expenses, the most common chosen alternative was utilities, closely followed by debt. It is notable that debt features so high on the list. It is obvious that while housing is a single biggest expense, when people have to choose, they will pay for housing over food. So that is why the Salvation Army has to ensure that we are there and we're available to actually give people food. They haven't made bad decisions. They haven't just wasted their money. They actually do not have enough income coming in every week to pay for the essentials, and sadly food is the first thing that they have to say we can't afford it. So yeah, that was quite an interesting survey for us to do. Also, just down the bottom, 82% of the whānau we surveyed had debt to work and income, and when we're talking debt to work and income, I'm on the loans assessment committee for the good loans, and we're talking, if I see anything under $10,000, I think they've done quite well. Some people are holding about an $80,000 debt to work and income. In the survey, it also came up around what happens when you are lacking food. How does it affect your health, physical and mental? And think that 89% think the lack of income of food is affecting their or their whānau's physical health, sometimes or all of the time. 49% said all of the time their physical health is affected by the lack of food. 40% said sometimes, and only 11% said never. So the lack of food, I know what I'm like, and I know what it's like, especially as a mum. For me, my son said to me the other day, he's an opinionated 16-year-old, Mum, we've got no food in the house. So I went and opened the fridge and the pantry. I said, do you mean we've got no food, or you mean you've got nothing you want? And because both were full, but the fruit bowl was full also. But when we go to these whānau's houses and we visit with them and we sit with them, you open the fridge, there is nothing. There might be butter, there might be a few old things, and you open the pantry, when we mean there is nothing in these people's, they have used everything, and they are hungry. The other thing, and I think we're all aware of it, that through COVID, I must say I'm a bit of an extrovert, and my mental health suffered. I felt more anxious. I felt like I couldn't get the balance between work and home. Even though I was working from home, I didn't know when to end work because the demands were so high, and there was this sense of isolation that I felt. But imagine if you're in that situation also and you had no food. I could get my groceries delivered, I could send my husband to Countdown, and he was lucky enough not to have to work so hard as me through the lockdowns. But you could always go and get food. You might have had to line up for it, but you could get food. A lot of our whānau were really struggling, and this isn't just through COVID, this is every day. So their mental health, 52% of them said the lack of food is affecting their mental health all the time. 39% said sometimes, and 9% said never. So for the Salvation Army, for what we're doing in the communities, being able to support people with the basic need of making sure their tummies are full, so at least then they don't need to worry about their mental and physical health, but also then to be able to engage with them and say, hey, how do we work with you? How do we help empower you? How do we support you to come up with a plan to face your debt? How is it that we could maybe talk to you around some of the dynamics that are happening within your house with family harm? And our social workers go in and we do these, we call them client-led plans, because we're not there to just come in and be the saviour. We are there to be able to journey with the whānau, and it is a real privilege. Every time I have had the time to be able to go frontline and sit with whānau, their resilience and what they can teach me just blows me away. These are good people who love their children like we love them, who want to do the best that they can, but man, life has been hard and the struggles are real, and income against the need to be able to pay for things is just getting further and further apart. So we just got some comments there from some of the people we've helped. Sometimes there is just an emergency. The top one is, my house burnt down and my family had nothing. They, the Salvation Army, put us up in a motel for a few days while they helped organise another place. This supplied most of the furniture, even toys for our 2 kids. I'm so glad and grateful while the support I got from here, as it made me see I had a chance to build myself up again and get back on my feet. Another one was, the first time I turned up to the Salvation Army on a Sunday, I'd have been kicked out of home and needed a place to stay. They got me some food. The officers, which are the ministers, like Anne and Alistair, brought me home for lunch and organised a place for me to stay of the night. On Monday morning, I met with Rosanna, who's one of our social workers, who took me to Winds, and eventually I got things sorted with my auntie. And then down the bottom, it was one of our staff members said, because of our overall ethics, we don't say go away because you don't have kids or you don't have family violence. We are here for all people, single people, those with mental illness. We stretch ourselves to be there, and if we can't help, we make sure we find someone that can. So with the Salvation Army, yeah, COVID has really affected us, and it has affected our families, and it made us get really busy. But also it is the every day, and today there will be people lining up at our doors saying, I've realised I've got nothing and we're going into the weekend, or they'll be saying, I got kicked out of home. And it's not our job to say, oh, of course you did, and you can judge. And sometimes we have to give ourselves a swift uppercut, because when you're working in it, you can sometimes get really judgy. We might be the Salvation Army, but we sometimes have to remind ourselves that we are there to care for them, to transform lives or reform society, and we need to sit and we need to listen and we need to help come up with solutions and to empower them. So it is great. We've got this awesome opportunity. It is a real privilege for us to be in this opportunity, but I just really want to honour Rotary. At our Mission Support Centre, our biggest volunteer packing teams are from Rotaries, and through lockdowns they were turning up, and we were all a bit scared about, if we were in groups, are we going to catch COVID, are we going to do this? Rotary kept on turning up. they keep on turning up, and I just really want to honour Rotarians. You turn up, you do the mahi, you walk the talk, you give donations, you are a great partner with the Salvation Army, and it's because of Rotarians and other generous New Zealanders that we have got the opportunity to care for people who are really struggling. So I just really want to honour you, say thank you, and I also just really want to honour all the teams who are frontline at our centres. It is not always easy, but man, we've got some good people, and the people who are coming in the doors, we always have to remember they are good people too, who want the best and deserve the best. So thank you for having me. Is it questions, or have anyone got any questions? We've got some really good info over here, so it's not going to be just questions to me.
What proportion of people who work for you voluntarily as opposed to
Yeah, volunteers have been an interesting one, and COVID really affected us with that. Volunteers, because a lot of our volunteers are retired people, and it's been wonderful, or a lot of them have been people who've been on the journey, a pathway, if they are at the age to be able to work, to be able to get to a place where they could work, which we celebrate. Because of the elderly, actually, we did actually suggest to many of them, maybe through this time, talk to your whānau, make sure they are happy for you to come in, or just stay away until you're ready. A lot of them have not come back because of the fear of COVID, and we do work in quite a high risk, face-to-face sort of environment. And also a lot of the people that we do need to celebrate, actually, of the ones that could work, have been able to get jobs, because the job market is just so what's our unemployment at the moment? Under 3%? It's the lowest, yeah. And so a lot of the people that were volunteering for us individually, we haven't, and we've had to actually start to create jobs and employ people into roles as well. Yeah, so yeah, we're working on it. It's something that I think in the next wee while we'll probably have to start to open the doors and invite people back and tell that story again, because in New Zealand we're a good volunteering country, so yeah.
We're probably operating around about 80% volunteer force,
yeah.
And that seems to be right across the country. So yeah, volunteers is very, very important. Just to tell you a story to add to what Rhondda said about the financial mentoring. We've got a financial mentor at Mount Wellington, and in the last 2 and a bit months, he saved families $150,000 out of bad debts. It's just amazing. So he's got the nous to actually, talk with some of these companies and get the result. But just the difference that makes to those families is just incredible. So.
You were talking about contracts that you have with the government. How larger role is government funding play in all the work that you do in the region?
In Community Ministries, I think we're sitting around about a 25% of our funding is from government. Our ASARs is probably higher than that. So ASARs are our addictions programs and reintegration programs. They're through health and things, but I think as overall it's about 40% of the Salvation Army services are funded by government, and we do have a bit of we want to keep it around that level, because we also need to make sure that as soon as you're sitting about 50%, you become a government agency in a way, and we need to make sure that we can deliver how we need to. Also, government agencies, government contracts are very specific around the area that you're helping people and the kind of people you can help. So our rangatamariki contracts are definitely to work with people who have tamariki, who have children. However, the Salvation Army is not going to turn you away if you don't have children, and so we need to be able to have our own funding. So if a single person comes in, or someone who is a couple on their own with no children, we need to say, hey, you're welcome, we're going to be able to care for you as well. And so our doors are open, and we need to ensure that we can care for everyone, but those contracts are quite specific. And even our financial mentoring ones, it is a specific area that we've been given the contract to deliver in, because other NGOs have also got FM financial mentoring contracts. So, but we go well and above. Let's say we've got a contract at one site for 600 sessions a year. We'll be doubling that and delivering.
So you've got a greater need. Does the budget adjusted every year so the contract price goes up?
We've done some good work with government to ensure, and it wasn't just us, it was a number of NGOs who got together to say, hey, we're competing with government agencies, let's say a rangatamariki who need a lot of social workers, who could pay their social workers so much more than we could because our contracts weren't as high. We're doing a lot of work with them, and the government has been open to that. It's a journey. But again, it's the generosity of others. And so we've got our Red Shield appeal. At the moment, we chose not to go out and bucket, shake, well, not that we're allowed to shake them, hold, this year. So what will that do for us for our next financial year? It's going to be interesting to see how that does. We do have great individual donors who will give funds towards specific projects. So our PR team, I was part of the PR team for 3 years. We worked very hard to tell stories, to connect, and to ensure that we can also be really good stewards of donations that come into us and be able to report back and give the stories, because we really want to honour that, and we are all in it together. Yeah. So. Yeah.
Great. Can I ask Bill to give you thanks?
Rhondda, thank you very much for coming to give us an insight into what you're doing and that sort of thing. We all grow up as a young people knowing of the Salvation Army, and the Salvation Army logo is always there, but we don't sort of get that insight, and you're such a group of dedicated, powerful people. And I had an instance where one of our site managers, I've got a construction company, one of our site managers, you were building the Waipuna Lodge, the big hotel there. He says, no, after this job I'm quitting. My family and I, he belonged to the Salvation Army, took them all off overseas somewhere, and was dedicating 5 years of his life to just working for the Salvation Army. And I tried everything in the world to try and keep him here, but
The mission, the call was strong.
yeah, you're such a group of incredible people, and thank you for keeping us informed, or keeping us in our minds of what you actually all your processes. Thank you very much.